So Ed Meitner, it's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, you're right.
And this isn't too late for you. Because I understand you work from about 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning.
Typically, yeah.
What does a day look like?
It starts off light outside and then it goes dark.
But you like working through the late afternoon, through the night and into the morning.
If it be up to me, it would start probably 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening and go on till, like right now I stay up till about 7 in the morning.
Designing.
Usually I play with the simulator on the computer.
In this room.
No, I go home by about 3 or 4 and then I do some more at home.
So tell us when you started your career in audio. I understand it was with Olive and a mixing console.
That was my North American start.
Oh, what started before that?
When I was much younger in Vienna, we had this thing that rock and roll started. And we needed to get music and we needed to get a place to gather. And for this place, we need speakers and we need amplifiers and we need record players, right?
And what year was this about?
60s.
And then in the 70s, you came to North America?
69, January 69.
And you came to Olive?
No, Olive was in the 70s.
Okay.
71. I started off when I came to North America to be in the computer end with Mohawk Data Sciences.
Okay.
Which was key to tape. So the elimination of the Hollerith cards, the punch cards, it was key to tape.
Okay.
I found that interesting for a while, but then extremely boring.
Okay.
Then I just went out on my own and pretty much made myself unemployable.
And this was in Montreal?
Yeah.
Okay, so what came next?
Guitar amps, stuff like that. And then I got asked by Olive to join the group.
And can you describe what Olive was at that time?
4 guys.
And it was
with a dream
to make a mixing console.
An automated mixing console.
Which had never been done?
No. With no mechanical audio switching. Only electronic audio, routing and switching.
Okay.
And controlling, which was nice because we made friends with MCI at the time, the tape recorder people, and Jim Strickland of Acustat and Hafler.
And that was the early 70s?
That was, yeah.
How long did this project last?
3 years.
Okay. And then what came after Olive?
A long pause.
Okay. How long?
Being romanced by the competition of Olive. But that didn't work out.
Okay.
And then I went into the business of generating ozone, large industrial quantities of ozone.
Okay.
To clean rivers.
Oh, really?
And air, yes, and swimming pools. And then I did a stint in the car business. I think then Amber came along.
And they were a test equipment company.
Yeah.
Because we still use an Amber analyzer at the National Research Council for our distortion measurements. Yeah. And you designed that analyzer.
Yeah.
I was really surprised about that because Paul Barton of PSB Speakers said, Ed Meitner designed that analyzer. And I'm like, you're kidding. And he's like, no, Ed designed that analyzer. Yeah. And did you design other test equipment?
The distortion analyzer, which was the portable thing that was, it was used by a lot of people.
Okay.
I also had a little bit of stint in England with Radford. Radford worked with a company called Wayne Kerr, also in the distortion and measurement business. I did some work for them, but there was nothing really major from Amber. It was distortion analyzers and, doing stuff for measurement of, ICs coming off the production line. So it had to be quick measurements for production testing and stuff. And then, the Oracle started to happen.
The Oracle turntable.
Yeah.
Because I learned you were involved in that as well.
Yeah, involved. I mean, it was too loose to say anything really. I mean, there were a bunch of people involved. And me was really, I had the electronics, in other words, the phono preamp and the power amp and stuff, so we could do, testing and listening and whatever demos.
Right.
And there was a magazine in Montreal, was Hi-Fi News. What was it? Paul Prin, Michel Prin was the.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the magazine.
It was the French magazine, and they were, great for exposing Canadian stuff. So the Oracle and the Musitex preamp and the Shin and Red cartridge and stuff like that.
So is that where the Musitex brand started?
Yeah, pretty much.
And that was what preamp and what amp?
Just a preamp.
Just a preamp.
Yeah, but with a couple patents.
And what were those?
A very unique adaptation of moving magnet cartridge.
And what was the other patent?
The VCA.
VCA stands for?
Voltage Controlled Amplifier.
And can you describe what
That's
is?
the volume control.
Okay.
That's what we used in the distortion analyzer. We used in the Olive console, and happened to use it in the preamp as a volume control with the remote. It had a wired remote.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, even with the balance control on it.
Yeah, the long 15-foot wire, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the amplifiers came after? The MTR 101s?
Actually, the STR50, which was the stereo amp, came first.
It came first.
50 watt per channel.
Because those are classic products.
Yeah.
People still desire them today.
Yeah.
And then the MTR 101s came after that?
Yeah. Those with the tubular heatsink, those are the real collector's items.
Because your son just bought a pair.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at those products, you were doing kind of lifestyle audio. Because they had a lifestyle appearance. They had a wood chassis, the tube heat sinks.
Yeah.
The whole styling was small before anybody was doing that type of stuff. What brought you to do it that way?
I just liked it. And I wasn't really sure, how would I do a chassis, metal chassis? How would I do that? I would make another boring, whatever looking thing. So I wanted the wood. The wood was really an escape, because I could hide my metal.
Okay.
And my cheap front panel.
Okay.
And the product was cheap, but we still made it look like something.
You did.
And it was the wood.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest problem. I always said we're going to be an electronics company. It goes bankrupt because of the fucking wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really like that, because to find somebody to make that case, you look at that case and you find it's very difficult.
Yeah. It's an elegant little...
It's very difficult to make.
Okay.
And we finally had somebody. I had to personally always drive there and talk to the guy and make sure we get just what we needed. Yeah.
And what year was that about? Mid-'80s?
Something like that, yeah.
But those were successful products because they're still revered today. You still see them looked up today.
Yeah.
And so what else came around at that time? What came under the Musitex banner?
Well, then Philips came to me. I don't really know what the contact was, but Philips came to me and had a chip and said, can you do something with it?
Was that the Bitstream chip?
Yeah. That was before the Bitstream, actually. That was what they called the DAC7 or something like that.
Okay.
Except I made a volume control out of it. So again, we had a wired remote on what's called the BIDAT. First, there was the IDAT.
And what was the IDAP based on? Was that a multi-bit converter?
That was that was a 21-bit converter where I did the level shifting so that we had the nonlinearity happening at 2/3 of the scale. That was later copied by Burr Brown for the PCN63 chip. That was the original, but that was everything. There was the reclocking in that, and pretty much all the things that later became the BIDAT and the jitter measurement and all that started with that IDAT.
Right, because you became, even though your original products were the preamp and the power amps, you became really known for the digital products. The converters, I think get a CD player in there.
Yeah.
And then you were doing things in the digital domain nobody was talking about, such as the reclocking. Jitter became a big thing.
Yeah, but our adaptive filter was first.
And your adaptive filter.
Yeah.
Can you describe how that came about?
That was a weekend of a rainy weekend in Boston.
And what happened?
Boredom.
Brought you to this realization?
I mean, yeah, rainy. It was between Rob and myself at the time. It was a guy I worked with, who I shared a patent with. Rob Chandran is his name. We just hung around rainy weekend in Boston at the office. Didn't know what to do.
And you came up with this adaptive filter.
And we said, wouldn't it be nice?
Why, though? What problem was it solving?
What? If you looked at the digital with all the overshoot and ringing and the phase compression and everything, you knew right away what the problem was. It was a stupid thing to begin with. The arrogance about it was that with sampling at 2 times the corner, pretty much, 44.
So 44.1 kilohertz?
Or 48, yeah.
Yeah, or 48. Capturing that 22 kilohertz signal.
And making it flat 20 to 20 in record and playback, there's got to be some magic. There's got to be some bit fucking with it. And accurately, that's what it was. It's this oversampling was doing bad things to the ear. This actually more to the subliminal than the actual hearing. Because what it replaced at the time, the Digital Perfect Forever, was a turntable that had a nickel glued to the head shell and a lot of dust coming from the cartridge playing your records. That's what it replaced.
Right.
So obviously it was better, right? And nobody could say it wasn't better. But it really was annoying. The sound wasn't what was expected.
What it was promised.
Funny enough, the very early ones where there was a lot of tape noise audible were sounding better.
On the CDs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Than the ones that were Digital Perfect Forever.
And why do you think that was?
Well, because the noise masked a lot of stuff. It was like a redither or some sort of masking effect that didn't let you hear the really bad stuff on the bottom.
And so what did your adaptive filter do exactly, would you say? How would you?
It looked at the signal and it decided what filter coefficient do we need.
In real time?
No, it's not real time. It looks at it, it does it, and then it gives it to you.
But as the music's playing?
Yes.
Yeah. And that is still used today in your products?
Yeah, except we improved it a lot.
Yeah.
With faster processors, and Marius working on it.
You were one of the pioneers in reclocking a signal, or at least investigating it and looking at it?
Adapting it for the audio business, yeah, because in the communication business it was a common.
But in the audio business, you were a pioneer.
In the audio business, we're playing with phase lock loops. As the thing says, it's phase locked, so now it hands you the phase problems that you tried to eliminate. So you need some filtering and some stuff. And
your system for reclocking?
Well, all you ever get with the filtering is an attenuation of it. You never get really rid of it. You actually start doing some other problems, like it takes long to lock, or you can't receive the digital audio signal from a satellite receiver because it jumps in frequencies every once in a while to make up for delays and stuff. So the phase lock loop can't keep up with it. You have a mess on your hands.
Right.
And the system we have, which simply is the bucket, you fill up with something and empty it and make sure it never overflows or underflows, is your reclocking. That's absolute.
And from what I understand, what you've said, your reclocking system decorrelates any timing problems that were there before.
It just blocks it. It doesn't decorrelate or anything. It just blocks it.
Blocks it completely.
Because we're not living off the incoming clock.
You're generating a new one.
We generate a new one. So we're actually frequency locked, but we're not phase locked. So we're phase decoupled, but frequency locked.
Okay. And this was all late 80s, early 90s you were working on these problems that have, been improved
This
today?
was another one of those things when we say, wouldn't it be nice?
And speaking of the clocking, I was kind of jumping ahead, but you've always been adamant that the clock needs to be right in the DAC or CD player or SACD player, right where the converter chip is.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's the shortest path,
And if you pull a clock out of there,
you're going to have problems.
you're not going to improve it.
Oh, definitely not.
No.
You're going to make it much worse.
It has to be right
Quickly.
there. And why is that? That reclocking has to be that close.
You want the least contamination by interference. There is lots of interference in the air, magnetic interference everywhere to begin with. You don't want anything to come between you and that. So it's not even logical to even think about it. Why would I want to remote the clock? The most sensitive part of the system. I want to now remote with some fucking cable of some distance, with some different power supplies, a different ground loop, and all these schmonzes that comes with it. Complications for no reasons, and deterioration of what you originally set out to do.
It could be to sell an extra box.
That's probably what it is, but that's pretty, whatever.
So let's kind of go into something we were talking about.
Now, the other thing that, just to interrupt you there, is this thought about having clock accuracy. As if you would really care. You listen to a turntable, you listen to a tape, and then you talk about crystal accuracy on the clock department for your digitals. It's kind of ridiculous to lock that to some nuclear or whatever oscillator somewhere that runs at the wrong frequency to begin with. So you got to do some stuff to convert the frequency to what you can actually use.
The clock, yeah.
Exactly. And chances are that is even further remote from everything. So those kind of things are really just marketing, sales.
So what is important in a clock for audio?
No jitter.
A jitter.
Which no jitter is a big thing, but not going to get that, but minimal. And that, to me, pretty much rules out the crystal oscillator, for instance, because we use something kind of special.
Will you say what it is?
Look. But it's very low jitter.
And on the jitter
It's
thing,
right to where it goes, where it belongs.
And in the jitter thing, you invented going back to test and measurement in a way, in the early 90s, the LIM?
Yeah, the limb detector.
As a way to measure jitter inexpensively compared to what, can you say how that came about? Kind of goes back to your test equipment days.
Well, it was that Stereophile started to measure competitive stuff with my analyzer.
Right.
So first of all, it has to be peer approved, which it was. AES paper given and all that stuff. And it got mentioned by Hawksford and other people as a legitimate thing.
Because you came up with this inexpensive way to measure jitter.
Yeah, we sold it to anybody who wanted it for $2,000.
Right. Okay, when other jitter analyzers
There
at the
wasn't
time,
any.
I thought there was for a lot of money.
Yeah, but not to that accuracy we need.
Oh, really?
No, because nobody was interested in the picosecond jitter business. See, in the audio, we're talking about I call it a ballpark. of 120 dB and 11 octaves.
Okay.
That's my ballpark.
Right.
That's a big field, man.
Okay. So,
Yeah, so, you figure what counts and what doesn't count when you're talking about 1,000,000 to 1 and stuff like that.
so back to Stereophile, I was always impressed, and I read the excerpt. You had an interview in there done by Robert Harley at the time, who wrote for Stereophile, where you kind of predicted the music server, early 90s. You were talking about people were going to use a graphical user interface. You were going to use them all before anybody was using one.
Yeah.
You foresaw that?
Not really. I just used it.
Yeah.
I had it. So for myself.
But you saw that was what audio was going to become.
I
Basically,
figured
computer-based audio.
logically, it was kind of. I had, I had one of those Sony 200 CD
Carousel things.
Okay. When we started that DSD stuff with Sony, and I had the 2 months to do something, I of course had a troupe from Sony coming here to listen to what I have to offer.
Right.
So they came, and I had the Musitech CD player, and I had the Sony Carousel sitting there, okay? So I said, what would you like to hear? And, I looked in my catalog and pulled it out from the Sony Carousel and put it in the Musitech's CD player. And I did that a couple of times until one of the Japanese asked me, Meitner, why do you do that? I said, because that Sony thing doesn't play this stuff. It's broken. So a few months after that, a box shows up with a new one.
Okay.
Guess what? It skipped.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just like the typical Japanese CD player digititis was the the triple beam system that
Yeah.
caused that. So it was kind of funny, I used that just as a storage device, which was perfect.
Yeah, because it held 200 CDs.
But when I looked at that, I said, look, I have this, I have a computer that has memory. And I like to access it much faster. I have a mouse in the, Jesus.
Yep. It was a logical extension that this is where computer audio was
Well,
going to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, we have the interconnectivity, the USB chip, that we have on every motherboard.
So we've talked a lot about digital.
Yeah.
And I said this to you a couple hours ago before the interview. You don't consider yourself a digital person. It's all analog, you said. Digital is
I'm either awake or I'm asleep.
the one or the zero. Yeah.
One or a zero, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But you said it's really an analog problem.
relative to audio.
Yes, relative to audio.
It's an analog problem. Yeah.
Can you describe that?
Wherever digital data comes, where the clock is buried or embedded, when you extract the clock, chances are you have a jitter problem. This will cause audible problems. So you want to get rid of it. You want to eliminate it. First you want to measure it. And actually, when you take your either whatever audio analyzer you have, and you go with the probe on the power supply, chances are you'll find audio on the power supply line. So that should be a first hint that might just be a problem there. So you just need to poke, and you see very quickly. Like a distortion or an audio analyzer, you can take a probe and put it on the power supply and see what's happening. Is there any 60 hertz? Is there 120 hertz? Is there noise? What's happening there?
Yeah.
So you play some audio, and chances are you're going to find some wiggle-waggle relative to audio. And so now you have a thing, you know that your digital chip, whatever it is, will be affected by the power supply disturbance. I can't tell you much beyond that, but if the light bulb doesn't go off by then, I don't think there's any hope.
Fair enough.
It's just that people don't use the audio analyzer to look at the power supply. It seems to me that in all the time I was a spokesperson for those people, people don't look at power supply, DC, with an analyzer, because DC, you look at it with a voltmeter or something, or with the scope, and that doesn't tell you what's happening 60 or 70 dB down.
Right.
But if you take the analyzer and look at it, all of a sudden you see things. As long as you AC couple it.
Okay, you're speaking beyond me now.
Okay.
Because I'm not an electronics guy.
But anyway, and chances are that then you find a way of dealing with it. And it's either more capacitors or better regulation or something, but you will do something about it.
Now, flash forward to today. We know what you said about vinyl, right? Scraping a groove and stuff like that.
Oh,
but you're
moving nail technology?
Moving nail technology, yes.
Yeah.
But you're a big fan of the DS audio.
Yeah.
Optical cartridge technology. And your company's now building phono equalizers for DS audio cartridges.
Yes.
And your son has joked that you never had an interest in making a moving magnet or moving coil phono stage today, but the DS audio phono stage, you want to make.
Yeah.
That it's really got you jazzed.
Yeah.
And why is that?
To me, it sounds so much better. And it shows off what vinyl can do in a really great form. And that's only going to get better.
And can you describe to somebody who doesn't know in just the briefest term, what the optical technology involves versus moving magnet or moving coil?
Well, instead of having a magnet or a coil moving around in a magnetic field, it's some shading apparatus that's moving with a cantilever. And the best thing is to just go to the DS website, where there is a nice explanation and pictures, and I think it's actually a little video that shows you exactly what that does. I can't explain that.
Okay.
It really needs to be seen.
But you make the equalizers for them now, and you feel this is a giant step up.
I think for the vinyl business, it's a giant step forward, yeah.
What benefits do you see on playback? Like, why is it better?
Better sound.
But technically, why is it better than moving magnet, moving coil? What problems does it overcome?
Because you have a lot of problems with the magnetics, plus the very low output voltage, which means a lot of gain.
Yeah, because most phono stages have what? Anywhere from 40 to 70, 80 dB of gain, right?
Yeah. Plus you need RIAA equalization, which you don't need the big part of it. But that, I mean...
You need some, right?
You need some equalization, but it's only 12 dB.
And you don't need nearly the gain either, right?
You don't need the gain, yeah. You need around more or less of what you have with the moving magnet. But then on top of it, you don't have another coil that picks up 60 hertz and all sorts of other stuff from the air. So the humming is... Plus the gain you have at the low frequency with the magnetic cartridges.
And I would assume you kind of gave up on vinyl technology years ago. Like, you even made a turntable under the Musitech, the Platterless turntable. Yeah. Are you surprised, though, to get back into vinyl technology with this? Did that kind of take you by surprise?
It took me by surprise that somebody did something to step out of the line of another moving coil. That's better because it got wrapped with gold leaves, or it got blessed by some rabbi, or some other stuff happened to it.
In other words, somebody did something new.
Yeah, very new. Back from what happened in the 50s that couldn't be done with the existing technology in the 50s. Like, you didn't have LEDs and photo sensors and all sorts of stuff. But it proved the point. And now it's with the 21st century technology.
And yeah, one of our analog writer, Jason Thorpe, one of them, he's really taken by it. He's got your phono stage, he's got the DS audio phono stage, he's got a couple of their cartridges, and he thinks it's a world better.
Yeah, it is.
And my understanding is this might bring you back into analog to digital conversion, that you might have something to offer.
I think there's a big advantage since this cartridge seems to have less pickup of it seems less noisy.
Right.
So there's already a big step when you convert to digital that you want to use a noise reduction system or a click and tick and whatever remover. It's not affected by the velocity of the blemishes. So it just picks them up as another signal, whereby a velocity transducer can pick up a tick.
We're talking a moving magnet or moving coil.
Yeah, much higher velocity than the actual signal. So you have things shooting out from the signal level.
Surface noise, ticks, pops, all that stuff. Yeah.
And it becomes audible as just a continuous background noise, like it never goes black.
Mm-hmm. And the DS audio cartridges greatly reduce that.
Yeah.
So you could see getting back into analog to digital conversion.
I was going to do that anyway. That's because that's a big hole.
Right.
It's a huge hole in the market. Is a good A to D converter.
And vinyl people might be more accepting of analog to digital conversion with what happened to mobile fidelity lately.
And yeah, that it was so audible that everybody heard it right away.
And then you're being sarcastic there, because they certainly didn't for 11 years.
That's right.
There was a digital step.
Yeah.
So Amadeus, your son, has told me that one of the challenges of working at Meitner EMM Labs is you create products you're interested in creating.
Yeah.
Versus just following what the market creates or the market wants. That must mean that you're still truly interested in designing, in pushing the envelope.
It's my hobby.
Right? So you must be totally into designing. You haven't lost a passion for it.
No.
And what is it that's...
It's just interesting. Like to play with my little friends, those transistors and stuff, yeah.
And how many years has it been?
I think it was when I was 14 or 15 years old.
You first started?
It was at Siemens. Siemens was in Munich, the Siemens solid-state lab. I was asthmatic as a kid, and I didn't do any of the sports. So I was interested in ham operator stuff and music getting out of the air, stuff like that.
Radio.
And we had a friend had a store, and they traded in radios. When FM came up, people traded in their AM radios. And so I picked up some of the stuff, and that was the parts we used to get in those days. During part of the time was Russian occupation still. And just came about that you had to build stuff. Like one of my friends built himself a little transistor radio, just for AM. And at the time I was in the hospital, and he loaned me that radio. So I was in the hospital with the earphones, and I could listen to the radio, which was great.
Right.
And it just snowballed from there. My math professor was a ham operator. So we talked about funny thing clock. Because for, a shortwave transmitter, you needed to have the driver oscillator, which was the clock.
The clock. That's interesting that kids back then would build that sort of thing. They might build a computer today.
And, we just built, and we had a lot of military stuff kicking around that could be used for transmitting in the 80 meter or 40 meter band. And had to build your receiver. Receiver was always the most difficult. Transmitters are easy.
A radio receiver.
A radio receiver is much more difficult than the transmitter. So a good one to receive distant. I mean, you could have a little crystal detector to get local stations.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just, and then there was a small group of people like-minded.
And that's where it all started.
So the idea exchange and whatever was easy and free-flowing. And the Siemens thing was great because after I did a month there during the school holidays, I would go home with huge boxes full of parts that I could never obtain
Otherwise.
just never, because to get a Motorola silicon Mesa transistor in those days was like getting gold.
Right.
All of a sudden you could build a 144 megahertz transmitter to go in the VHF band.
And so let's finish this off with one more old technology, because I know you're doing something with it. Tape technology. You described it as you want to prove something to yourself or prove something.
I have a patent that I can apply to the tape head recovery. You see, when you take the same thing applies to a moving magnet cartridge. The inductor, the coil, can be used to make the RIAA.
Equalization, yeah.
Yes. Just the coil.
Just the coil, okay.
And it gets received in a negative impedance detector that actually puts stuff back into the coil and hence creates that 50 hertz turnover for the RIAA curve.
Okay.
So now you have that part already done in the cartridge.
Okay.
And it has huge advantages.
You're saying equalization in the cartridge.
The RIAA curve,
Yep.
the main part of it's already there as a given.
As a given, yeah.
You don't have to make another filter to make it.
Right.
And then try to dick around with the cartridge with the loading impedance and the capacitor that you never get right.
Right.
Okay, this one makes a negative short across the cartridge, and that's the end of it. There's nothing to do on the cartridge anymore.
Yeah.
And I have a patent on that. And that also can be applied to the NAB equalization on the tape head.
So that's something you're experimenting with right now.
I will, yeah.
And so do you ever think about all the products you've created? No? That are people using them and stuff and what they think? No?
No, I hear it every once in a while. I don't go to any of those sites.
Yeah?
I don't do any of that.
You just create.
I just don't want to know.
You just create it and then move on.
No, I move on, but the product lives with me. It lives with me because there's upgrades. You can trace every one of our products back.
And that's an important thing. I know you mentioned
It is an important thing, yeah.
Because Amadeus...
That's how much I think about the products. I don't think about their use out there because I know what they're used for. I think about, what is the next step to the thing. Can we make an upgrade or does it require a new product?
Right.
Usually there is a few upgrade steps before you start to think about, taking this into a...
And I know that Amadeus showed me the input board on your amp, how many revisions you went through before you came to that final revision already.
Yeah.
And then you think about it beyond that.
No, I think that one is at the end.
But other products might be.
Oh, yeah, other products, yeah. But that particular part is now at the end.
Unless you think of something new.
Don't think so. That's pretty much
The end.
of that part, yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise it has to be something completely different.
So how would you like to be remembered as an audio designer? Does it ever dawn on you?
I don't know.
No?
Knowing that business, they live on negative things more than on positive things. That's my take on it.
Yeah, but the audio equipment brings a positive to most people's lives.
That's good.
Is there a product in all these years you're most proud of?
The Olive console. I think it was...
We're talking early 70s.
Yeah, it was such a big thing, so outrageous at the time, that I'm wondering today how we ever got it together. And when I hear that there's somebody out there now using it...
Like there is actually.
Yes. And having made a couple of hit records on it. And now we have a digital plug-in.
What is that, about 50 years later?
Yeah, we have a digital plug-in to mimic the Olive sound.
Digitally?
Digitally, yeah. I mean, it's... You can't help but feel good about it.
I can see that.
Because it was like... I was sleeping in my car, and they would come knock on my window to come in and test the new thing that came off the line that we need, to put the console together. And it was just so much.
By a small group of
And
people.
intense that we actually had door locks on the inside of our office doors in communication through the intercom.
It was something that could probably never be recreated today. That kind of environment.
I don't think so. Because it had to be really far up. Yeah, everybody of the group was successful, is successful.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I think is you've had a remarkable career. I know you don't really like to talk about it too much, but you'll get talking on certain topics.
Yeah.
But you've had probably the most diverse career of any designer I've talked to.
Hey, it's great. If we did something positive, it's good.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.